Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. If you've not heard of me before, my name is Stuart Tan. I'm a trainer from Singapore. I've been speaking for well over 28 years and I'm currently on a mission. I want to be able to reach out to as many people as possible to alleviate their pain and suffering caused by a whole range of things that they really shouldn't be doing, like messing up with their own mind. There is a necessity to clear up our own mental junk, and that's why I'm on this channel. One of the key things that I've noted though is there's a huge demand for people who want to develop better habits, establish better goal discipline, and so on. So I decided that I will do a series on this, and I'm going to start out by highlighting what we do know and what we probably don't know about habit formation. If you happen to be new to my channel, I'd like you to like and subscribe to help us with the algorithm. This way we can get more of the message out, and we're relying on you, the community, to help to elevate society through our education and enable other people with this free knowledge. So go ahead, like, subscribe, share this with friends whom are also on the same journey of personal growth and personal mastery. In the past, I used to do a lot of research in psychology because of my background. As a psychologist who's studied quite a number of different papers in organizational psychology, counseling, and psychotherapy, I decided to put this capability on video. And as a result, I'm going to run through a particular paper related to habit formation that was quite groundbreaking in my opinion. In 2013, the Health Psychology Review had a paper published by Philippa Lally and Benjamin Gardner. Lally, in particular, is behind a huge amount of habit formation research that's even been quoted by James Clear in his book Atomic Habits. So I'm going to dive into some of this research, and hopefully you'll be able to find the research practical, actionable, and produce results for you. So let's talk about how habits actually get formed. According to the psychological definition of habit, it is defined as a behavioral pattern enacted automatically in response to a situation in which the behavior has been performed repeatedly and consistently in the past. Now, again, there are a few keywords over here that we have to highlight. The first one is automatically. The next one is performed repeatedly and consistently. Now, in order for us to be able to do this, we need to take a look at repetition, and we need to take into account the mental association in the situation with the action being taken. It's found that situationally, the behaviors tend to be more stable, but if you take a person outside of that context, it doesn't seem to be as stable anymore. For example, hasn't there been a time where you traveled from one location to another only to find that your habits just completely get out of whack? What it means is that there is a priming effect and a context-specific learning effect that causes us to retain a certain set of habits. Of course, when repetition takes place, it solidifies that action, and as a result, it turns into an automatic behavior. In the paper published by Lally et al. In 2011, they found that through repetition, the need for cognitive effort actually decreases. In other words, the more you repeat that habit, even though it requires some kind of effort initially, that kind of effort actually tapers off in due course. What this tells us is that as we apply repetition, it's insufficient. We need to have a certain intensity level so that that level of repetition becomes quite natural for us over a period of time. One of the findings that they had was that whenever we have a habit, it tends to take place in the presence of certain kinds of cues, or in neurolinguistic programming, we call those triggers. The power of the use of such triggers actually enables an individual to set up reminders. It's more likely for you to have the calendar notifications prompt you, and therefore you get things done. However, if you don't have a prompter, it is unlikely that you're going to get things done simply because it's on a to-do list. That's one of the reasons why to-do lists don't actually work. They don't function as a good enough cue. However, if you tend to layer more cues on top of each other, it's more likely to help you to gravitate towards establishment of solid habits. So think about it this way. If you wanted to build a solid physical habit, don't just use one cue to remind yourself, such as a calendar. Use everything within your visual and auditory and kinesthetic representational systems to help to cue that particular behavior. For instance, it could be a reminder from a friend. That's why accountability buddies are always very helpful in assisting you to get to where you need to go. Secondly, you need to use a certain specific approach to using those cues. For example, how about associating the smell of coffee to going to the gym? I know that sounds a little bit odd, but if you are the type of person who habitually takes coffee every single day, you can take that cue to remind you to actually get your workouts done. Likewise, there's a dime a dozen of so many different kinds of things you have to do if, let's say, you're an entrepreneur or you are a leader in a high position. There is so much that you can't categorize your thoughts well, and as a result, there are too many novel experiences. What happens to the cognitive effort that you need to do in order to maintain those habits? It goes way up. And what happens to the level of your stress? It also goes way up. So therefore, what we have to do is to establish the sequence of behaviors more effectively. This alludes to something about intentionality, but the problem with habit formation is if you've gotten into an unconscious habit where you get overwhelmed by swimming in your thoughts with 1,001 different things and not really having a process to sort it out, it's more likely that no matter what you intend, it's not going to help you to form that new habit. As a result, it is necessary for you to utilize alternative methods to help push in that effort. It could be an accountability buddy, an external force. It could be some kind of self-talk. And I have a research video related to guided imagery that talks about some of these things that can also assist you alongside another one which has got to do with internal self-talk that enhances the ability for us to enact certain kinds of procedures and actions. So think about the consistency of the settings. If you're in a consistent setting and you establish a solid habit because it's constantly being cued, chances are when you go elsewhere, it has become an automated habit. You're going to go out there and attempt to fit in with those kinds of actions as well. For example, recently I took a trip out to Phuket, and I do remember that going there, I wanted to get myself into a gym. In fact, it was already on my mind that when I flew in, I was going to hit the gym, get my workout done, and then go to sleep. I didn't know where the gym was, so that was a little bit disappointing. So what I did, I had a calisthenic session, had a shower, and then I went to bed. And that actually did help, and I realized that the habit was more or less automatic in spite of the fact that I was no longer in the same kind of setting. In my mind, I knew that I had to go through this kind of action, and as a result, my body was the cue. Now think about what these cues could be and what kind of behaviors they could be. If they are simple behaviors such as exercising and workouts, it could be your door the moment you walk out, for example, or it could be brushing your teeth. So the brushing of your teeth actually serves as a reminder to change out and go to the gym. According to this paper, habit formation takes 4 stages. The first stage is a decision. You need to be able to make a choice that this is what you're going to do. Secondly, the decision needs to be translated into action. In other words, you have an intention and you have a behavior. Most of the time, your intention is very far in between your actual behaviors. So you decided not to take sugar, right? But then you find yourself actually eating an ice cream immediately after that. In most cases, however, the intention has to be backed up by some kind of a concrete plan so that you do take action. For example, are there ways for you to expose yourself to ice cream and deliberately prevent yourself from actually taking that ice cream? Is it also more important for you to stop thinking about ice cream and start thinking about, let's say, broccoli and chicken? Whatever the case, there are some research papers that highlight that trying to stay away from something is not very helpful. Instead, by generating thoughts that focus you on new habits that you can then lean into, tend to allow you to have less focus on anything else. After all, it's the same adage, don't think of a blue elephant and you tend to think of a blue elephant. So internal self-talk alongside with some kind of a plan of action is more effective than not having a plan of action itself. The third part is about motivation. If you can motivate yourself to carry out these activities, it's found that within the time frame of 18 to 254 days, habits tend to become more automatic. And what I find is that there are some caveats to this. The reason why it's such a wide-ranging thing sometimes has got to do with the state in which we're in. For example, if I have a more intense state, like a level 10 state, it might be that I associate the trigger and the action more concretely. This is probably one of the reasons why and phobias don't really take a long time of automaticity to form. In fact, the moment you see something that might attack you, straight away you flood yourself in that state and you run away. That's an automatic behavior. I suspect that one of the things that needs to be done is to intensify the emotional experience of that pleasure to such a heightened level that it creates an automatic connection and reduces the amount of time required in order to exhibit that behavior. The fourth thing is a condition, which is to repeat the behavior is one thing. However, you need to be able to repeat the behavior in a manner that is conducive for the formation of such behaviors. Let's take a very simple example, which is, let's say, journaling. Suppose you want to make journaling a regular habit of yours. What do you have to do? Firstly, you need to decide that journaling is good for you, right? So by being able to make that decision to then continue to do journaling, it becomes a little bit easier. Number two, you're going to have to plan it, and you're going to be able to schedule it or do something that will enable you to get reminded to do this. For example, you might actually structure some time for yourself in the morning or late at night so that you'll be able to do this on a consistent and regular basis. Then you're going to ensure that this plan is experienced by doing it on a regular basis, perhaps over the next 7 days. Then you're going to use this process on an ongoing basis to go to a specific location so that you can do your journaling regularly. Now, on top of that, if let's suppose that you're being blocked, there may be a few things that prevent you from doing this behavior though. For example, if you wake up in the morning at 5 a.m. to do your journaling, do you have a habit that is already conducive to help you to wake up at 5 a.m.? So there's a domino effect. If you already naturally wake up at 5 a.m., chances are you're going to be able to execute this behavior far more regularly. And on top of that, let's suppose you woke up at 7 a.m. and you had distractions. Perhaps there was the honking of a car outside of your house. Perhaps a neighbor was having a fight upstairs, and it kind of distracts you from actually doing this behavior. Consider that this habit is less likely to get developed because you're constantly being disrupted, and you need to find ways to reduce the likelihood of you being disrupted in that behavior in the initial stages of your formation of this new habit. So let's break that down one more time as an initial foundation for us. There are 4 key stages. You need to be able to make a decision, but decision is affected by so many things. It's influenced by persuasion, life events, and also personal reflection. For example, when I first started developing healthy habits, it was because I saw the deterioration of my father's own habits. He contracted both diabetes and cancer as a result of very poor nutritional choices. At the same time, as he was declining, I noticed how painful it was for him to be in hospital care and hospice care. And I knew that I had to do something with my body because I was already genetically predisposed to end up like him. That was really crucial for me to begin on my healthy habit, and as a result, I went and researched some kind of methodology, some kind of diet, in order to increase the intake of more nutritious foods and other foods that were more healthy for me. However, the intention and behavior gap was really wide. I knew next to nothing about nutrition. So I had to pour through hundreds and hundreds of hours of watch time on YouTube related to some of these. And as a result, I now had some kind of a protocol that would help me to develop these habits. If this is a novel experience, you have to break it down. You have to think about what exactly is the plan of action, and then you implement it. One of the things, of course, is repeating this is very easy. I could very easily structure it into my calendar so that I do a 16-hour intermittent fast followed by eating a high level of proteins and fats in my diet so that I can get into a state of ketosis. However, what if my family doesn't like the keto diet or the carnivore diet for that matter, and they're not as interested in the education that you have received? That's one of the reasons why your entire environment also needs to be set up. I'm so fortunate I have a partner who also abides by some of these nutritional principles, and we eat together. So this is great. If you have a family environment that is detrimental to this habit formation, you know for a fact that the habit formation is going to be difficult, and therefore you have to go back to influence the decisions of other people, which I'll cover in subsequent persuasion-related topics. Now, having said that, I need to be able to then remove bad habits. One of my bad habits was eating ice cream. I loved ice cream. In fact, I still do. So in order for me to stop eating ice cream and not have the cravings, that would be a silly idea because it's just going to blow out my mind and my cravings. I do know, however, that if I were to take ice cream, there are things that I can do to mitigate the impact of that ice cream and that sugar. For example, I can take more fiber, twice as much as normal, so that I can use that fiber as a buffer to prevent the sudden spike of insulin in my system and slow down the digestion process. Likewise, I can utilize apple cider vinegar to mute the effects of the sugar cravings so that I can continue to return back to that state of ketosis in a faster fashion. I decided that I will only take ice cream on occasion, and that again was a new habit formed. I will only find it on certain days and certain periods of my life, such as having a party over Christmas. There are probably certain periods where it will cause me to have more parties than not, such as my birthday period, and I'm prepared for that. So I'll end up ensuring that I have proper nutrition, and during that month or so where I'm invited to parties or for drinks and so on, I will allow myself to enjoy that and then to go back to my natural habit all over again. It really does help for me to go in and out this way because it's supporting my ability to return back to the behavior. I'm literally training myself to get a little bit uncomfortable and then coming back to the zone of habit. And that has actually served me very well. So much so that when I see my weight rising up to about 71 kilograms, I know that that's a trigger or a cue to help me to get back down by being a little bit more disciplined through that week to enable me to drop further back down to 69 kilograms. So coming back to this entire application of new habits, you need to first decide where you want it and how the toward and away from motivation is actually going to raise this motivation for you to at least kickstart this over the next 30 to 40 days. It does seem that the median is between 66 and 84 days according to two different sets of research. If you want to be able to heighten this, I'd highly recommend that you utilize a proper procedural method, and I'm going to outline it to you right now. Step 1. Think about the future and think about how beneficial it will be if you were to arrive at this future. Notice what you see, what you hear, and what you feel, what other people are saying, and write this down. Make it as vivid and emotionally convincing as you can. Number 2, consider the consequences of continuing on your current trend of behavior, maybe 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years into the future, and make a list of all the consequences that will happen to you if you continue in this direction. Normally, when you place these two side by side, there will be a level of impact, and I'd like you to internally have an idea of the level of impact as a scale from 1 to 10. If the positive motivation is only at a level 1 out of 10, you're not going to have very much leverage. You're going to have to think about something, maybe even make something up inside your mind that allows your future to not just be interesting, but to be so compelling, so that you bring it from a level 1 all the way up to a level 10. And sometimes this requires a few things. Number 1, identifying what your values are. Are you living your values? Who are you? Tapping into your identity to identify who you are and what you stand for, and what it means to stand by your word. Another one is to identify all the past experiences that you've actually had to achieve something similar. Maybe in context, you are attempting to build a $10 million business, but you've never built a $10 million business before. However, that's in a sense achievement. So you can think of moments where you have had achievements relative to where you are right now. For example, as a child, you may have won a championship trophy participating in an oratorical contest, for example. If that's the case, then what you can do is utilize that memory to bring back the emotional state or that positive motivation inside of your body, and then use that to focus on wherever it is that you're going. Another way to do it is to take a look at people who are disadvantaged but yet achieve the same goal. This in neuro-linguistic programming is known as a counter-example. Whenever you create counter-examples to the difficulty, it actually becomes so much more convincing for you, doesn't it? So all you're doing is you're establishing a strong level of belief inside your mind using one of these 3 approaches to be able to turn your future into something that is so compelling that it rises from a 1 all the way up to maybe a 10. That's one part of it. The second thing is to also recognize that while you can be drawn towards a future, you need to move away from the pain of the past. The pain of the past doesn't happen right now. It happens only when you deliberately consider all the negative consequences, and then your brain is going to want to find another way that will avoid all of these negative consequences. For example, you will know what will happen to you if you ate ice cream, like a pint, every single day, right? Every single day you're going to accumulate more fat, you're going to end up becoming insulin insensitive, and you're likely to develop diabetes. There's a very, very high chance there. So if you continue in that direction, the diabetes is going to have another domino effect because it's comorbid with many things. Amputations, heart problems, degeneration of the brain, cancer, because cancer feeds on sugar, and so on and so forth. Now, if you can imagine that and turn that into a reality inside of your mind, you're very likely to end up feeling very grossed out, maybe even aversive towards that outcome that you don't want. By taking that feeling and embodying it inside of you, it's likely that you're going to feel so turned off by eating anything sugary that you're going to turn towards this approach instead. So what I personally did was to shift away from high sugary environments into choices where I'll only see the things which are the most healthy for me. I would move away from refined carbs towards maybe fruits in order to get that sense of that sweetness. And as a result, my entire body gets the satiety, it feels good, there's no loss of quality of my intake of food, and I'm also getting healthier. So once again, this process is actually very easy and very accessible to you. The only trouble is that for most people, they don't have the methodology to do this. You create the future and you establish a toward and an away from frame. The next thing is to ensure that your intent and your behavior are actually matching. How do you do this? Firstly, with your plan, the more incisive your plan, the more effective and procedural your plan is, it's more likely that you can visualize it throughout your entire day. For example, when I have to do a workout, I will refer to a workout sheet. There are 8 exercises and I'll go through each and every single one and I'll swap them out alternate days. So I have a clear guidance, I don't have to think. If you have to think, chances are you're inserting a gap between trigger and response. And while that might be good for interrupting bad habits, it's not very good for the formation of new ones. And for all intents and purposes, the neuroscience tells us that when we emphasize new habit formation, it actually allows old habits to fade away. So intention, planning, and the ability for you to test things out, and then also to reflect in terms of whether or not you've actually been able to roll them out effectively, is also key. So I'll give you a very simple example of how these cues actually affect you, especially when your habit starts to waver. What happened was my room was really messy, and the very fact that my room was messy caused me to avoid sitting at this table very frequently and going to my gym cage and working out. I know it sounds a little bit trite, but that's exactly what happened. After I cleared up my table and sort of made some adjustments to my room, something surprising happened. My gymming frequency actually went down. So once I detected that and I was measuring myself against the past, all of a sudden I realized that I had to make a change. And the change was not something that's really significant. All I needed to do was to go back into my motivations and my decisions, that especially since I haven't reset this behavior yet, I will go back and deliberately set this behavior on a more intentional basis. So I set a plan, I created my workout plans, I decided to follow that plan, and it's become really clear since. Now, at the same time, there are many things that don't support your behaviors, and you need to be able to strengthening the intensity of the habit that you do want to create. For example, whenever I go through the procedure, I want to see myself easily going through it, but do I do it from an observer standpoint, or do I do it through as if I am actually doing it, looking out through my own eyes? And the answer is probably looking out through your own eyes. Why? Because if you think about it, and there might be variations for different individuals, what you want to do is to imagine what it's like to do the workout through your eyes, notice the intensity, and still feel good about it. Conversely, if you're just observing yourself, you might actually be able to do that inside your imagination, literally just closing your eyes and imagining yourself working out. That itself might be satiating. That's not what we want though, right? We really want to get into the mode where we can see ourselves working out, we can feel the sweat, and that itself serves as a feedback mechanism for the brain to recognize that yes, I'm actually doing it. And now it's not just the physical context, but the mental context that has been formed. So as we go through this entire journey of forming new habits, remember, it's just these 4 steps. Making sure you make a right decision, establishing the goal that you want, making sure that you've got a toward and away from plan, establishing the right kinds of know-how. If you know the procedure to do it, it's even better. And finally, establishing the right kind of state, the internal resources that you need in order to enhance or to amplify the correct state that will help you to get this action done. So this is, in a nutshell, the starting point on habit formation. I'll share with you other things as well, like for example, how do you get rid of habits that you really don't want? And I'll talk a little bit more about these other findings in a subsequent follow-up video. Now, if you like this so far, please let me know. Also like and subscribe so that we can get more of this information out into the general public so that they have these programming tools at their disposal. If you have questions, comment down below and I'll be very happy to address them. If you had new questions or if you had areas that you'd like me to address, please let me know and I'll be very happy to do so as well. In the meanwhile, if you know anybody who can benefit greatly from this, just share this on your social media and I'll be very grateful for your help as part of the community that's willing to help others to elevate society to a level beyond pain and suffering so that they can take actions for abundance. See you in my next video.